This is BKL Nightly. I'm Thad Brown along with Caleb Carr. Monday, March the 16th. We're all feeling lucky tomorrow, but right now we're going to see how lucky the Bills feel about the first week of free agency, who they've added, the trends that we're seeing, and what might be left out there on the market that is worth discussing. Caleb, since we last got together, the Bills did add a couple of players in the secondary. The most notable, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who I think will be a safety with the Bills, but actually played a little more nickel last year. Let's talk about Gardner-Johnson and how we think he will fit. I think the big thing with him is that this is a guy who brings energy. He's got a dog in him. You know, that's the phrase you hear all the time. We're going to get to the off the field stuff in a little bit here, but as a player, he does have 6 interceptions with the Eagles 2 years ago. 2 interceptions last year with the Bears, bounced around quite a bit, but an exciting player that certainly seems to have fit the attack style the Bills are heading to.
Yeah, he's interesting. You know, he's kind of, like you said, he's bounced around. It seemed like he's maybe had a hard time fitting or like finding his spot maybe in the NFL, but he is a very good, like I won't say very good, but he is a good player. He's a good athlete. He kind of knows what his strengths are, I guess I'll say. And just from listening to him a little bit in the press game, yeah, you watch him on the field, he's got that dog, but even just listening to him talk, you can tell he's got that like I'm good mentality, which can sometimes get in the way. But he's got that mentality of like, yeah, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to be one of the best players on the field.
Few of those interceptions, I went back and watched them, are backup quarterbacks.
Yeah.
He got Cooper Rush, I think, twice last year. So
I think did he go to was that last season?
It was 2 years ago. I'm sorry, 2 years ago
yes.
Against the Cowboys.
Yeah, he took one of them in the house, I think.
I don't think he had a pick 6.
No,
but
maybe I'm thinking someone else.
Maybe. Regardless, I don't know if he's good. I think he's fine. You know, in the category of what the Bills are doing this offseason, which is what they do every year, they're filling holes. They're plugging. They're doing what they needed a safety. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he's more of a center fielder than he is in the box safety, so he can fit with Cole Bishop. But he's versatile too. He, like I said, he played mostly nickel last year for the Bears, which means he can play up in the box. I don't think he's the best tackler in the world. If the Bills were running 4-3 and they wanted Gardner-Johnson to replace Taron Johnson in the nickel, I don't think that'd be a great fit. But as a safety who can do a few other things, I think this works really, really well. Now, as for the off the field stuff, the reason he played half the season in Chicago is because he got traded to Houston before last year and washed out with the Texans through 3 games because he just didn't get the defense. He didn't get, is really kind of generalizing it. There was a play in the end of week 3. It's 10-10. Houston's playing the Jags. They're in 3rd down with 2 minutes to go. It was Kawhi Lassiter and C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the same side of the formation. Apparently what the play was supposed to be, Gardner-Johnson was supposed to take the first receiver to go outside. I'm sorry, take that back. He was supposed to take the first receiver to go inside. He did take the first receiver that went outside. Lassiter got left hanging. 46 yards later, the Jags have 1st and goal, and that was the ball game. And then Gardner-Johnson's out the door the next day.
Yeah,
and
they'll do it.
Right. To that point, he has played for, as it says there, 7 teams in 6 years. Gardner-Johnson has not gone more than 1 season with an NFL team since 2021. And that includes this year because he played last year with the Bears.
Wow, yeah.
So this is the guy that clearly wears out his welcome. Now, when he talked to the media the other day, he did allude to that a little bit in terms of what he is. And I really was impressed with the level of maturity he seemed to have about understanding kind of what kind of guy he is.
Ball hawk ability, physicality, and ability to, toe the line but not cross it. I think he crossed the line plenty of times, but over the course of my career, I have a good tendency of towing the line and having my teammates be able to tow it with me and really playing feisty and going out there understanding that you gotta play with that passion and that chip on your shoulder playing for the city. And really just focus on ball, because that's what's in Buffalo. Ball, hockey, ball. So it's like, why not be in that environment? Like, we're in college again, so really gravitate to the guys. And like I said, April 7th, when we go in for workouts, that's when it starts.
So a little joke in there about how there's nothing else to do in Buffalo but play ball.
Yeah.
But again, Gardner-Johnson, when he says, I toe the line, sometimes I cross the line, he knows that he's the type of personality that's going to push the guardrails to a degree.
Yeah, and you talk about players who go over that line, and I think the Bills have had a couple on their roster, and we've certainly seen some throughout the NFL, and sometimes they are just so good that it doesn't matter. Sometimes they're not good enough so that they crash and burn. But I think there's a difference between being that kind of player and being a player that's like, listen, I know that I'm a little bit out there. I know that I'm going to push it a little bit. I know that I'm going to maybe make some people upset here or there, but I'm doing it because of how passionate I am. Like, it almost seems like he's doing it out of I'm just so passionate. I want to put the best foot forward. I want to do so good on the field, and I want to work so well with my teammates that I don't want to say like upsetting people, but that kind of vibe, but the fact that he's able to admit it, and the fact that he's able to say like, yeah, I know that this is what I need, then it makes it a little bit better in a sense.
I agree with that. I think he's mature enough to know who he is and what he's become. To be honest, you mentioned the Bills have had guys like this. I don't know if they've had very many under Sean McDermott. McDermott valued the culture in the locker room.
Yes.
And I don't think Gardner-Johnson is a guy he's dropping in unless...
I don't think this is a McDermott guy.
Unless he's like a game changer, which Gardner-Johnson is not. And to be honest, there have been a number of times, I've thought the last few years, that McDermott, the culture kind of gets a choir boy image, which probably isn't fair. But would it be worthwhile to go out and find a guy that pushed the envelope a little bit? Just shaking things up is one part of it, but even to just have a variety of personalities and to have a little fight, a little battle. Not that guys didn't. Jordan Phillips was a guy that might be 75% of what Gardner-Johnson did in terms of shaking things up, but he loved being there. So Gardner-Johnson is a different type of guy. I don't mind the swing. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better. I think end of the day, how well he does is determined way more by his talent level than how much dog he has from this part of the discussion.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think of this too, because Joe Brady said at the combine, this is year 1, not year 10. So what is year 1 in quotes going to look like? Well, how is it different with him? This seems to be part of it. That he is okay with a guy like this. And it also fits in, if you think about what we know about Joe Brady, player's guy, offensive guys love him, really wants to connect with his guys. I think it's reasonable to assume he might be more of a player's coach. Not that Sean McDermott was ridiculously not a player's coach. Yeah. But if Joe Brady wants to go more that way, Gardner-Johnson fits that mold.
I think just comparing the two coaches between McDermott and Brady, Brady's definitely more of a player's guy. Mm-hmm. And you just used the term like fits the mold. I think the thing right now is we don't know what that mold is yet. Like what is the Buffalo Bills mold? What is the Joe Brady, Jim Leonard combination mold on defense? We don't know. This maybe gives us a little bit of an insight, but like he said, it's year 1, not year 10. We're not going to know what that mold is yet. So this kind of gives us a look at, I don't know whether this shows us what the mold is or if this shows us that they're trying to figure out what the mold is. They might not even know what the mold is yet.
Exactly what I was going to say, that they probably don't even fully understand. But I think the Gardner-Johnson signing is most interesting from what it reveals about either what the mold is going to be or what Joe Brady wants it to be, more so than what's he going to be like as a safety.
Yeah, definitely.
He was not the only safety the Bills brought in over the weekend. Geno Stone was also signed, another safety from the Bengals, a starter the last 2 years on a defense that was terrible. So I don't think the Bills want him to be a starter. But as a third safety, I think it makes a lot of sense. Stone talked to the media on Monday and mentioned what he feels like is the most valued trait that the Bills want him to employ when he starts playing in Buffalo.
They say they like to see me in the post, and let my instincts take over and go take the ball away. That's kind of what they said. They didn't have as many turnovers as they want last year, and that's kind of why they brought me in to go to get the ball. So that's kind of how I was envisioning myself. That's how I see myself in a lot of places, was to go get the ball. But at the same time, when we put split safety out to play in the box, wherever it may be, I could do that. But when it's time to go get the ball out there and put me in the post.
want to throw some numbers at you here.
Yep.
Geno Stone, 13 interceptions in his last 3 years. CJ Gardner-Johnson, 9 interceptions his last 3 years, along with 3 sacks. D. Alford, 3 interceptions last season, 2 sacks last year as well. What are the Bills trying to tell us about who they want playing defensive back in this new defense?
Honestly, I mean, they're trying to.
It's not
get
a puzzle.
turnovers.
It's not a puzzle, right?
They're just trying to get just like Geno said. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to get the ball. Now attacking, we'll see how well that works out. I feel like there was kind of that. I know obviously there's a different scheme, but I feel like McDermott's defenses, at least some of the past years, maybe not so much last year, but definitely a few years ago, they definitely had a attacking, go get the ball mindset. But it definitely feels like that's what Leonard is looking for, at least in the secondary. Obviously, those are really the main moves that he's made, other than Bradley Chubb, but that one's kind of a little bit different. But yeah, definitely guys that can like know where the ball is at all time and have a want to go get it.
You were right about the Bills' defenses under Sean McDermott being good in general with takeaways as it is. I think adding in the sack part of it too. D. Alford last year had the third most quarterback pressures among defensive backs. It's 9. It's not a giant number, but third most is third most.
It's still, still third.
And if 9 is third most, when I tell you C.J. Gardner-Johnson in like 10 games had 6 quarterback pressures, again,
that's impressive.
We are identifying, we are learning about what the Bills want to be. I'm with you. I don't know if it's going to be better. I know there are a lot of fans out there who look at the aggressive attacking style defense and are drooling for it because Sean McDermott hasn't done that. I'm going to tell you, I don't think it really matters what style you use. It's still about the players who are on the defense. Mm-hmm. And I don't think any of these players are great. I also don't think they're bad. I think they're filling holes. But it is interesting that aggression, attack, takeaway, we're seeing that over and over and over with the guys the Bills are adding.
Yeah, and from a fan's point of view, aggression and wanting turnovers is all great. And it's awesome when you get 3 in a game and it helps you win the game and you get the game-sealing interception. It's not so awesome when you have 3 to 4 guys on the field who that's like their main focus, and then you let up a 75-yard touchdown because you're being too aggressive. So like you said, it depends on the players on the field. If they can all find a way to balance the aggression, and I feel like I'm maybe trying to like support the old Sean McDermott ways when we're in a new era, but just from my perspective, I don't know how much I want the players on my team to be going full aggression mode.
Ready for a truth bomb here? Sean McDermott might be a better defensive coach than Jim Leonard ever is going to be.
Maybe. We don't know. We have no clue.
This defense may never be as good under Leonard as it was under
Jim Leonard could also be a much better.
Exactly. So. We have no idea. We have no idea. It is still early with all this stuff. Again, I don't look at the Bills right now as a wildly better team. Like right now, sitting here right now, I feel like they've taken the snow globe, shook it up again, and are hoping to see something different come out. Because the level of talent is about the same as what we've seen. There's a solid edge group. The secondary has solid players. We got questions to address. We're going to talk about that in a moment. It's still way early, too. I'm not going to sit back and assess what the offseason looks like on March the 16th. But through the really busy week of free agency, this feels like the same old Bills that we've seen the last few years, which can still win a championship. I mean, they've been a game or 2 away the last 2 years anyway. Yeah. But I don't feel like you're kind of like shaking your head at it because
you can't win a championship until you've done it.
Well, yeah, but the point I'm making is you have a talent level in Buffalo currently that is good enough to contend. And if you can contend, you get a couple breaks, all of a sudden you're there.
You can do it.
But I don't feel like that this team is so much better than the last few years that they won't need a few breaks to contend already.
Did we really?
I'm kind of threading a needle here, but
did we really expect this team to be that much better, though? I mean,
no, absolutely not.
So end of the game against Denver. Holy cow! I don't know why I completely blanked. End of the game against Denver. At that point, you're like, next year the Bills should be able to be better than they are now because that's how teams work and that's how teams grow. You lose a game in the playoffs and you do something to address the mistakes and you hope to get better.
Right.
But the second that Sean McDermott was fired, I think that threw all of that out the window.
I know what you're saying.
And now the expectation is, okay, can they show that this was, although they probably aren't going to be better next year than they were this year, can they at least show that there's some promise behind this move that was made, firing Sean McDermott, hiring Joe Brady, bringing in Jim Leonard, that in 2-3 years, they are better than they were this season. Well, so I don't know how much, I don't know if we can really expect them to go into next season drastically better than they were last year.
I agree. And I've been saying since the moment they changed coaches and changed defensive schemes that there was going to have to be some patience on the part of Bills fans. One thing that we talked about in the office just a minute ago, to that point though, the guys they've added in free agency are all on the older side. There are not many second contract guys. Yeah. Even D. Alford is a second contract guy. He's a weird situation because he played in the CFL. Yeah. So these are all guys, except for Geno Stone. Everybody they've added will be 29 at least by the end of this year. So now you can be fine this year, but if there's going to be a transition period with this coaching staff, which I think is likely, not a guarantee, but likely, now you're talking about everything you've added this year is going to be 30 years old before you have a legitimate, realistic opportunity to realize some championship success with it.
Yes. I mean, we talked about it in there that, like, I don't hate the fact that all these guys, I see it as like a middle ground. You know, the 28 to 30-year-old is kind of like a middle ground. It's not nearly as bad as when they brought in 33-year-old Von Miller.
For sure.
Like, these aren't that bad. Now, obviously, they're not bringing in super young guys either, but I don't completely hate that, especially as like the first year of this transition. They're trying to still figure out, maybe Jim Leonard and Joe Brady want to get their young talent in the draft. That might be, now obviously you're not gonna, especially in like where the Bills are right now, this isn't like, hey, let's go win a championship in 5 years. This is, let's go win a championship in 2 to 3. Like, that's the goal. And I don't think you can get to that level through the draft only in 3 years. So obviously some moves are going to have to be made, but I'm not too upset that they aren't getting made this year. I think, especially with the amount of cap space that this team went into, sometimes you can't afford those second contract guys. Like, once a guy gets older, he gets a little bit cheaper. His play might be a little bit further down, but he's also cheaper. I think give him the draft this year, and then maybe next season we'll see a push for some younger guys in free agency.
Salary cap thing is a good point. And then this is also the fallacy that comes with evaluating your offseason work through 1 week. Because whatever the total vision is, it's going to include work at the draft, which we haven't gotten to yet. It's going to include more guys being signed in free agency between now and even
We're
July.
only a week into free agency.
Exactly.
There's so much offseason left.
It just, you do content like this, people want an evaluation.
We
exactly.
Have to, yeah.
Right. You feel like you have to. When in actuality, we're trying to evaluate the painting, and like the upper corner is the only thing that's been painted so far. We have a lot more work to do with this team. To that point, what should the Bills do at linebacker, in part because they haven't done anything so far? One thing I want to bring up with this, the Bills roster, this was pointed out by Chris Brown, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, who obviously is the play-by-play voice of the Bills, that on the roster, they have changed some positions to reflect more of a 3-4 style because they don't have just linebackers anymore. They have outside and inside. The important ones, Greg Rousseau, listed as an outside linebacker. I thought he might be more of a defensive end as opposed to an outside linebacker. I still frankly think he's better there, but I don't want to have that discussion right now. Dorian Williams listed as an inside linebacker, which to me is really surprising because I thought he profiled as a guy who could be an outside backer, who could attack the quarterback, who would be effective that way. He's a little smaller, so usually the inside backers in a 3-4 are bigger. You don't have to be, but generally they are. So that surprised me. Go back to the bigger question, though. Where do you think the Bills should do, or what should they do at linebacker here going forward?
I mean, I went back and I tried to take a look earlier, and I'm trying to take another look now just to make sure that I didn't miss anybody. There aren't a ton of linebacker free agents that are jumping out to me, especially, I mean, like, you've got guys like Bobby Wagner, but we just had the conversation about how they're not going.
He's 35.
Yeah. Like, I don't, that's even worse than signing Von Miller. I think the best option is probably in the draft. And I mean, I think linebacker and safety are kind of two of the bigger roles on defense when it comes to like the quarterback of the defense. Like, those are the linebackers, and the safeties are the guys that are kind of running everything. And I think that Jim Leonard might just want to go get his guy in the draft. Like go get go get whoever he wants instead of picking up a 28-year-old who already has this certain play style and has played this certain way for his whole career. Go get a young guy out of college. You grow him. You kind of build him up the way that you want him to be built up. And I think right now, just with what's out there, that's probably your best option. I don't love that for like looking at the next season's output, but from a future team building standpoint, you're not gaining anything by signing 35-year-old Bobby Wagner.
The tough thing with the draft plan is that I think the Bills need a receiver in the draft.
Yes,
and they very likely might need another edge rusher or defensive lineman in the draft.
That's the problem with these conversations. Is that I just want to say draft for every single answer.
And they have one pick in the first 95 now after the DJ Moore trade. So do you want to spend that? What do you spend it on? I wouldn't, of my choices, I would in general in a vacuum not want to spend that first round pick on a linebacker.
Probably not.
Do you want to try and chase that in round 3? You could, but
if there's a guy there, we don't know what their draft board looks like. So there definitely could be.
In a vacuum, I would want the Bills right this second to go edge rusher round 1, receiver round 3. Sitting here right now with still many more moves to go. And if you're doing that, I think you gotta add something at linebacker.
That's also the top. That's probably your best like value plan too. Because while linebacker is a position of need, the linebackers in the draft, especially where they're going to be drafting, aren't anything insane. But there are some really good wide receivers you can get late in the 3rd round, and there's some really good edge rushers that you can get late in the 1st round.
So to that point, that means you got to go sign somebody at linebacker.
Yeah.
Because Dorian and Terrell Bernard as my 2 inside linebackers, I'm not super excited about. You could do that because you could go Hoyt and Rousseau in this defense at outside linebacker. I think you got to add somebody. Bobby Okereke is the name that I've been on for a while. Giants inside linebacker, worked with the new inside linebacker coach, John Agorwagu, the last 3 years in New York. Certainly has the experience, longtime starter. You could pencil that guy in next to Terrell Bernard, and I think that'd be a really, really solid inside linebacking core. Problem is, his spot track market value is like $12 million per year.
Yeah,
which
he's expensive.
Probably don't have the cap space to really want to spend. Maybe. Beyond that, when you start going to the cheaper options, you know what really pops up really quick to me is Shaq Thompson, if he wanted to come back.
I love Shaq Thompson.
Exactly.
I love Shaq Thompson. I'd love for him to be back on Buffalo.
And I think he thought he had a big market, and maybe he still will sign that big contract. It doesn't seem to be materializing yet.
Yeah.
So the longer he hangs out there, I think the better an option it is for Buffalo. He has more played a 4-3, but again, I think him next to Bernard would fit just fine in terms of an addition. And then I'm still with you. I'm 100% drafting a linebacker in April, but it's probably going to be between rounds 3, 4, and 5.
Mm-hmm. The only thing with Shaq Thompson, and I've said this a couple times, especially early on in the offseason when the Bills first fired McDermott, I don't know how much he wants to come back to Buffalo because whenever you talk to guys that come to Buffalo as free agents, and they've got 5 different reasons why they wanted to come to Buffalo. Josh Allen, the city's great, the fans are great, the coaching staff, they got all these reasons. Every time you ask Shaq Thompson, it's one single reason, and it was Sean McDermott. That was the only reason that he ever gave. Now, obviously, as you got further in the season, I love my teammates, I love the city, but that's not the reason you came here. That's why you like it now you're here, but that's not the reason you came here. I'm concerned about his willingness to come back since McDermott was booted.
Everybody needs a job, though. At some point,
everyone does need a job.
He may need to have a job. I don't know if it'll get to that, but it's the longer he sits out there, the more possible it gets. It's still early again for that, but not impossible right now. Moving up one level on the defense, do the Bills need to add more at defensive line as well? Sitting here right this second, when we talk about edge guys, Rousseau, Hoyt, Chubb, Landon Jackson, maybe Javon Solomon. Interior defensive linemen, Oliver, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, and then it's Zion Logan, Fedarian Mathis. You could roll with that. I'm not excited about it. I think I'd probably rather add an edge over an interior, even though with Rousseau and Chubb, you are set at the starters. Like you could roll those 2 guys out as your edges and you feel fine. That's a respectable level for sure. And really you could go Oliver Walker in the middle and your front four is good.
Too,
right. So maybe interior, I guess there's an argument here about which way you want to go. I think you get more impact out of an edge because I think it's easier for the Bills to take the body types they have right now and fit them for the interior 3 than the outside guys, but you could argue it either way.
I think edge is definitely just, like you said, impact. an edge is probably the area that you're going to get the biggest improvement to, because right now you're not taking, like, Ed Oliver healthy is one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. So you're not like bringing anybody in that's going to be better than him, especially with who the Bills have in the contract. Like, you're not doing
right now.
Yeah, right now you're looking for depth. So I think interior, while there is, I feel like depth is needed more interior than it is on the edge. I think if you go for an edge guy, like you said earlier, it's got to be in the draft. It's got to be a young guy that you're like, okay, we really like this guy. We're going to sign this guy. He's going to play behind Bradley Chubb for a couple of years, and then he's going to emerge as a big player. If you go interior, I think that's got to be free agency, and it's just kind of a guy down the list that's going to, like we've said, fill a hole and be able to come step in for a couple snaps when Oliver's out or when Walker's out. And I mean, we've seen the injuries that have happened previous years, especially on this D-line. You're going to need depth on the interior defensive line because there's going to be an injury. The Bills will never, I don't think, ever be completely healthy for a full season on the defensive line, especially on the interior.
Yeah.
Nobody is.
Yeah.
But the Bills especially have had a lot of problems interior injury-wise. So I think if you are going to bring in a defensive lineman interior, it's got to be free agency and just a guy that can fill a depth spot.
Good news is I think there are a number of depth level linemen.
Yes, there are. There's plenty.
Yeah, in terms of spot tracks assessment. DJ Reader is the big name everybody would know. But there are 3 or 4 guys that you could add and add a depth guy. And I like your point about there is probably more opportunity for an impact edge as opposed to an impact interior.
Yes.
To really
especially with the way that this team is set up right now.
Yes. Because they also spent a second round pick on TJ Sanders last year. The Bills will probably still want to try and realize some benefit from that.
Yeah.
So I think the play is give me a depth guy in free agency, and I would spend my first round pick on an edge, and I'd feel pretty good about my defensive line if those hit.
I agree.
Last thing we want to get to here. Again, we're through 1 week of free agency. Whether it's a good Bills fit or not, who is the free agent that has kind of caught your eye that's still available right now that you are most interested to see where they land?
Just I got a couple.
Okay.
The old Bills fan in me is very intrigued to see where Stefon Diggs goes.
Yeah, I thought about that one.
I'm very intrigued to see where he goes. I don't want it to be in Buffalo. I don't want it to be anywhere near Buffalo. I don't want them to even play Buffalo next season because I don't want to deal with that whole situation again. But I'm very intrigued to see where he goes. Tyreek Hill, you can kind of throw in that same wide receiver mix. But another interesting one is a guy that just recently became a free agent, was released by the Tennessee Titans, L'Jarius Sneed, cornerback. And this is one that I do think could find a spot on the Bills roster potentially. Like I could see that working more than like a Stefon Diggs or a Tyreek Hill.
Now, if he's coming there to at least compete to be a starter.
That's the only, and he's also coming at a pretty high price point. So probably wouldn't happen, but I could see that one happening more. But he is an intriguing player that I'm like, I was surprised by his release. And so because of that, I'm curious as to where he goes next.
I think the Bills are done with free agents who are really interesting. Big name guys.
Oh, definitely.
I think it's depth guys.
I think the Bills were done with that as soon as they signed Bradley Chubb.
It might be true. The guy who interests me is Juwan Jennings for a number of reasons.
Yep.
What does the league think of him? I know fantasy guy loves him. So what kind of contract does he get? The team he goes to, is he going to be the number 1? Is he the number 2? Where does he fit? How does he fit? So there are so many fun questions that the Juwan Jennings signing will, I guess, potentially answer. That's the one for me that really stands out about I'm very, very fascinated by how that free agency situation ends.
I like that too, because it's not often that you have a offensive lineman who's turning heads in free agency. Now we've had a couple this year already, and I think Taylor is another one that will be.
If Tyler Linderbaum were still available, he would have been at the top of this list.
Oh, well, obviously, yes. But like I said, he's the other one that I mentioned that it's not often that you see big name offensive linemen making an impact in free agency.
I did kind of look at Wyatt Teller for a second too for this one.
Yeah.
In terms of
he's a good name.
Guy. Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of BKL Nightly. For Caleb Carr, I'm Thad Brown. We'll be back again on Thursday. Remember, you can see this show on Rochester First and on most of your local streaming channels, and you can find it very often, almost always, on YouTube as well. Once again, we'll see you again talking more free agency on Thursday.